it's Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Coming to the blog post we want to share with you, of course, review the latest in social media and technology. This is two phones that we have from the HTC One line. We have the HTC One X and we have the HTC One S as in Sam. Both phones are great phones. They come from AT&T.com with the X, and you can find their phones there. And with the T-Mobile, you can go to t-mobile.com. That's t-mobile.com to be able to see their phones there. We're reviewing a number of phones from both AT&T and T-Mobile. Be sure to check in, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also be sure to check the ChrisVossShow.com, see all the other cool stuff that we review and take a look at in the world of tech. Now, let's get into what both these phones are and how they do. Be sure to tune into one other video we'll be doing. We'll be comparing the HTC One V in a 3-up comparison video. You'll be able to search for that. Now, for the HTC One X, what we're looking at is dimensions of 134 by basically 70 by 9 millimeters, roughly. We're rounding up a little bit. It's 130 grams with the battery. It's got a 4.7-inch Super LCD 2 capacitive touchscreen, 720 by 1280, Corning Gorilla Glass, Android 4.0 ice cream sandwich. It's got the HTC Sense 4.0 out of the box on it, quad-core 1.5 gigahertz, and it has 1 gigabyte of RAM. AT&T says it has 16 gigabytes of built-in storage. And it's got an 8 megapixel rear camera, and it's a 1.3 megapixel front camera, non-removable 1800 milliamp battery, NFC capable, so you can use NFC with this. And it has Beats audio on it. Now, most of the HTC line has Beats audio on it because they invested in Beats audio and hold a significant share of the company. With the S, what we're looking at is dimensions of basically 131 times 65 times roughly 8 millimeters. We're rounding up a little bit. Its weight is 119.5 grams. It's got a 4.3-inch Super AMOLED capacitive display, 540 by 960, so definitely a smaller screen. And it's got HTC 4.0 Sense UI. It also comes out of the box with the Android 4.0 ice cream sandwich. It's got 1 gigabyte of RAM, 16 gigabytes built-in storage, dual-core processor, 1.5 gigahertz Snapdragon. It's got a 8 megapixel rear camera, 1.3 megapixel front camera, and of course it also comes with Beats audio. So really similar in their builds and makeup and everything else, but there are some, like we said, some distinct differences. Now, one thing I want to discuss with you on the phone is that the X has been updated to the 4.0 Android system, and so that's been installed in here on this OS. The T-Mobile, as of this moment of recording, has not been updated. Now, we are running both these systems on the 4.03. We've upgraded both of them to the 4.03 versions, and actually, sorry to correct myself here, but we have 4.04 running on the X, as I mentioned. And you can see those here. Now they both have the HTC Sense. Now, why this is important and why I point it out is because what's happened with the 4.04 update that's come out from HTC, what they've done is they've made it have the ability to where you can take and program this button, which is normally your recent apps button. You can find these on both devices. You can take and control how you want to adjust that. Now let's take a look. You can see here there's a menu item for recent apps button, and what this will do is make it so that you can control and customize this button to just open recent apps, much like it does on the HTC One S, or you can set it for press for menu, press and hold for recent apps, or you can set it for press for recent apps, press and hold for menu. Now there's a menu built into the UI with both HTC phones. When you take a look at them, you can see that there's menu things built in. But there's some Android users that really prefer having a menu button here in the bottom portion. So keep that in mind that if and when the S is updated with 4.04 update for Ice Cream Sandwich, it will also get that ability. And it's a really nice ability to have, as you can see here. Let's go into an app, and we'll go ahead and activate the menu, where normally, if we were doing this otherwise, this would, on the S, this would activate recent apps. And of course, you can hold this, double tap it, and come up with recent apps. So it's really nice, that customization feature that they've added to the 4.04 system, and hopefully it will come to the S. Let's get into some more details about how these take and run. They both have the ring standby mode to pull out of standby, or you can drag in the device app that you want to have open when you put it into the ring circle, and it will take and do that. So it has that classic HTC operation as to how it goes. Let's take a look at the bodies. Okay, so let's take a look at the bottom. Now you can see that the HTC One X is a little bit thicker than the S. Not much to see here on the bottom. There is a small microphone hole that you can see for each phone to pick up sound. So you can see here that the X is probably more square, where the S is more rounded. Here you can see the tops of both phones. On the X, you've got a plastic button here for power. You've got a SIM card area in the back there. You've got your earphone plug, and you also have another microphone. With the T-Mobile S, you have the power button here. You have a small place to be able to pry your fingernail into, or screwdriver, whatever you want, to be able to pull the top plate off. We'll show you how that works, and insert your SIM card. And we have a microphone hole and an earphone hole. Here you can see the bright side of both phones. Now the HTC One has got a very long, just a little bit longer than the one that's on the X, volume rocker button. I've had a lot of problems with the volume rocker button, and it may just be the size of my hands, but I'm constantly turning it on and off. It's very sensitive, and it kicks me out of programs and everything else. It's not a big deal. It might just be my 9-inch span hands, but I've had a real problem with it. It's very easy to touch, and it's very easy to activate itself. I've had much better results with the rocker button that's found on the right hand side of the S, and so I've liked this much better when it comes to it. I don't know if it's steel or plastic. It feels almost a bit like it's a little steel, where over here we have a plastic button, but maybe it's a small aluminum or something of that type. But it definitely feels a little bit like possibly metal. I can't tell, but it definitely has less of a reaction and less point of changing the volume when you don't want to, or accidentally hitting it, than the X. It could be that I just have an X that, I don't know, it's very easy to increase the volume. Here we can see once again on the left hand side we've got the charger mini USB ports for the both phones. Now, both phones, to keep in mind, especially with the HTC line, both these phones will output to HDMI TVs. You have to get a specialized adapter to be able to do it. You can find it on amzn.to, but it's pretty cool. You can actually broadcast these onto your HD TV with an HDMI adapter. So that's really nice, and it's got a special thing where you can not only charge it, but you can also output to the TV. So if you get that adapter, that is available with both these phones. Okay, so now on the front of both phones, you have the speaker in the top here for making calls. You have your front-facing camera on both sides here. You have pretty much the same menu options with the back button, home button, and recent app buttons. And of course, we discussed what happens with the update, where you can change that. One key difference here about the HTC One X phone compared to the S is this top part is plastic, and the body itself is plastic. It's very plastic feeling and operating phone. Now, the other thing that I like about the S is actually this top part has kind of aluminum steelish finish to it. It has a steel body where it's not plastic. I like the look and shininess of the silver. It just appeals to me much more and looks like a much more cooler phone with the shiny element that you get off it. The body here is an aluminum or steel, whatever you want to call it. It's a metal product. There's this two ends are just plastic, but it does feel a whole lot nicer holding this phone and the impression that it gives off because of that metal image. And I tend to like this phone a little bit better because of that element. Now, on the back, the HTC curves a bit, and on the X and on the S, it kind of curves inward as opposed to outward. You can see here we have the speakers on the bottom. I kind of like the S where the speakers put further close out to be able to bounce off the table and be able to hear sound. Now, the X does have this little digitized system where if you buy certain cradles, it will not only charge but sync using this without having to plug in your cord, which is very nice. I haven't seen any of them yet, but I believe they're probably out there. They both, of course, have their cameras in place. You can see the flashes next to them. One aspect that I really like about the S, once again, over the X, is that with the X, the camera lens is placed flat against this raised area. Now, the problem with that is that anything it touches is going to scrape the camera lens. It's completely flat, and it doesn't really give a good buffer in this raise to protect the lens. So I've been really paranoid. You want to get into a case as quick as you can. You can see here there's a small hole for the SIM card entry to be put into the HTC One X. It's a unibody, so it doesn't have a back that comes off. So that's been one challenge that I've seen with the camera. Now, if you get a case for this, you're going to have that protected. The thing that I do like about the HTC S is it has a raised area around the camera lens, and so it's raised to where it's less likely to get scraped if you set it on something that's flat. So I really like that experience with the S. Very much more happy about it. Now, of course, it's got a solid body up here. Down here it's got the speaker, and on the top this thing will pop off so that you can apply the SIM card. That's pretty much all you're going to get out of it when you take and pull the top off, is put your SIM card in and away you go. And that's pretty much the comparison between these two when it really comes down to it. Let's see if I can get that put back into place. So I actually like the look, feel, finish, and everything over the S, with the S over the X. I do like the X big screen, but when it comes to the camera and everything else, and the way it's placed, built, the finish, the S is a little bit nicer. Okay, so let's take a look at the screens. You can see here that the screen, of course, is a little bit bigger on the height ratio for it. And let's take a look at how they look side by side. It definitely is, of course, a much bigger screen, as we know from measuring on the HTC One X. You can see here the X is a little bit wider also. I got to tell you though, the X does feel like you're holding a giant square phone. It's a giant box feel to it. And I got to tell you, I really enjoy holding the S. It's actually kind of a nice break to hold a nice thin phone for a change and still have all the power of Android. And I like the feel and finish of it. It feels different having the metal finish. I just can't tell you enough. So let's take a look at some different aspects of this. Now, we'll take a look at the phone menus on both of these. Now, the beautiful part is you, of course, have menu items on both of these that are built into the UI where you can take and do stuff. But the great part about the 4.0 system being added to the HTC One X is you can also access those details with the button, where if I click this on the S, I'm going to get recent apps. Now, this isn't a big problem. It isn't a reason why you probably shouldn't purchase the phone. I would highly anticipate that they're going to take and update these phones to the HTC One or the 4.0 for Android update. You see here a little bit different menu system between T-Mobile, where you can actually monitor your minutes and everything else to make sure that you're staying within maybe your billing cycle that you want to take and do. Okay, so now let's take a look at the speed test that we did on both these devices so you can get an idea as to how well they performed. Now keep in mind, with these speed tests, we've already done these prior. We're running the results logs that you see here. We do notice that, yes, it is logged into a Wi-Fi. Seems like there's some people that like to be on my YouTube going, your Wi-Fi is turned on, man. So what you can see here is you can see some of the results. The speed test between the AT&T phone and the T-Mobile phone in speed test that took and got. Looks like we have one bottom here that actually is a Wi-Fi test. So you can ignore this one. Let's go ahead and just take that baby right out of there. So you can see here, these are the different ones that we used to be able to test the results of the both networks. Now, we don't really want to compare AT&T to T-Mobile here. What this is for you to take your phone, use these apps, follow along, and be able to see what results you're getting and what results you might want to take and get from either one of these phones that you decide is the phone for you. Okay, so now what we've done is we're doing speed tests on the hotspot ability of both phones and both phones' ability to put out great speed. And of course, some of this has to come down to do with the carriers, but you can also kind of see how this compares. Now, this is a rundown of several tests we did with the HTC One X. This is through AT&T, and we're using an Apple iPad 3 or new iPad, however you want to call it, to take and process the data. As you know, the iPad 3 is a huge data suck, so that makes a great testing thing. So here's some of our speed test results you can see for the HTC One X. Okay, so here we can see some results that we're getting with speed test on the HTC One S. You can see here the results that we're getting from that using an iPad 3 as the hotspot. So you can see the hotspot comparisons between the two if you compare them on the video. These are just to give you some figures. Of course, you can do your own comparisons at home with your own phone and determine which of these phones will be best for you. Both perform very well in a hotspot scenario and situation where you're able to watch Netflix in high definition with very little buffering, maybe 2 or 3 different buffering hiccups, and of course the mileage will vary depending upon where area you're in. But they perform very well at sending us video and work really well with Netflix in being able to wander around with a hotspot. Alright, so here we are on a video call with the HTC One X, and you can see here we got fairly good results in the front-facing camera. Everything's going well. This is on a localized Wi-Fi internet. We're feeding off to an iPad 3. So you can kind of see how well that performs and how well it looks. Okay, so here we're using the AT&T service to take and do the video call. There's some difference in the quality that we're seeing with the HTC One front-facing camera. And I don't think it's a difference of AT&T's service. It really does look like it's not quite as quality for a front-facing camera that we're getting over here on the iPad 3 that we got on the S. It could be the S is definitely faster in a lot of the benchmarking tests that we ran. But this gives you a good idea. You can compare apples to apples with this. This is running through AT&T's network, so you can see how the results are that way. Looks like both phones perform very well and very fast. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're doing a in-call Skype call so that you can see how the front-facing camera performs and puts the image onto another computer. We're using a iPad 3 for this, of course. This is on a Wi-Fi, and so this is a localized Wi-Fi between the two different computers, just to give you an idea as to how well the front-facing camera performs if you're using FaceTime, Skype, or I shouldn't say FaceTime, should I? That's an iPhone thing. But if you're using Skype or Tango or other things, you can see how that's going to come out the other side. Now let's try using the network of T-Mobile in this case. Okay, so now we can see here with front-facing camera, of course, the video that we're getting. This is over the T-Mobile 4G network. So you can see here, not much difference really when it comes to localized internet service and or it comes between the 4G network. So both perform very well, and you can see the phone does a great job at processing data and processing video images. Awesome. Now, one thing we found in testing with the S phone is it's a very fast phone given for its size. It actually scored really well against the Samsung Galaxy S3. So you can see here the scores that both phones got in the AT&T benchmark test, the 2.9.2. The S actually outperformed the X. Now keep in mind they pretty much have the same processors in them. Of course, there's more work that the X has to do because it's dealing with a bigger screen, etc., etc. So you can see the performance numbers of how they rated, how everything broke down. Okay, so here's this is running Geekbench 2 to give us some benchmarking scores here. You can see that the S actually nudged out the X by a little bit in many of the categories for integer, floating point, memory, performance, and stream. So let's page down through these so you can take a look at them. And of course, you can see here the different numbers. You can see we're using the 4.04 OS here. Integer performance numbers you can take a look at here. You can compare these side by side. And of course, what's great is you can download most of these apps we're using for benchmarking, compare them to your current phones that you may take and have. So I'm going to pull those over so you can see the bottom of them. It's a real small edge out in most cases when it comes to speed and performance of both phones over one another. Here's your floating point performance numbers. We'll page down just a little bit more and get into this area. You can see here that in memory performance it actually outpaced it well. It did very well against the Samsung Galaxy S3. We're really surprised that this little phone could rock and roll. And on that note, it makes a very cool little phone to own. I've actually quite been taken with it. After having the X for so long, having the little S is a nice, fun little change of pace. So you can see here some of the different numbers running Geekbench. Now you can see here we're doing a GPS test where we're testing the GPS abilities of both units to be able to perform. You can see here with the X we're able to get down with an accuracy of 10 feet, 10 to 13, and we're getting 19 satellites that the phone's picking up. It's using about 8 of those to perform. Looks like we're picking up more satellites with the GPS on the S. We got 20 to 21. It's using 13 of them. Still having trouble getting down to the level of 10 accuracy feet. You're within 16 feet. Looks like we're going to 13, and it may just be a point of being able to pick up the extra data. So you can see the comparison is that both these phones actually really do a good job at pulling in GPS data. Okay, so with both phones running billion counter, you can see here that the X was able to count to 1 billion in 19 seconds, and the S took a little bit longer, 23 seconds to count to 1 billion. Okay, so you can see here we're using the &E Bench app for this. We're testing benchmark modes of both native and Java threads. You can see here that the S actually slightly outperformed the X, and yet when it came to Java in native, it outperformed. When you come to Java, the X outperformed by a slight margin the S. Okay, so now we've run the Quadrant Standard app test, and you can see the device, the HTC One X, rated at a 4791. Now, if you notice here right below it, there's the HTC One X. We noticed that the HTC One X performed differently as we upgraded through 4.0 and then up to 4.03, 4.04. We noticed there was some difference here. So when this refers to HTC One X, I believe there's kind of a mishmash of OSs in there, and in each upgrade they've of course made different performance standards, so that's probably why those two look different. The device came in at 4251 compared to 4791. The S came in a little bit lower when it came to some of the benchmarking stats. You can see their CPU total numbers here, how they broke down, memory, I/O, 2D, 3D, etc., etc. There's different tests that all these benchmarks test on everything, and that's why we go through a series of different checks and balances so that you can get a good idea as to how they work. Okay, so now we've run a GL Benchmark 2.1.5 Egypt test on this. You can see there definitely is a distinct difference between frame rates and everything else. Keep in mind the size of the screen, of course, is different on the S. You can see here it processed 26 frames at 57 frames per second. With the X, it did 53, 51 frames at 47 frames per second. Of course, it's a larger screen now to process. Okay, so here we've run the Passmark performance tests. You can see they both came out fairly comparatively similar. Not much difference here in the scores when it came to the system. Let's see, it looks like the S actually came out a little bit higher on the CPU test and the disk test. Let's go down to, we can see the memory tests here. Pretty much very close here between the two of these, and the 3D graphics tests that we can compare. So you can see the breakdowns on how these two compare. Okay, so here we've run the KFS benchmark update. You can see here the Bamboo perform frames per second, 60.468, much less than the X1X, I should say, 56 frames per second. Much more frames per second, of course, overall. Well, on the Galactic Core, it looks like the X outperformed it by a smidgen, and but lost on the rest of the comparison benchmark tests. Now, let's take a look at the camera on both these devices, and you can see how that operates. Cameras, of course, to me, are some of the most important aspects of a smartphone. You can see here that they're very similar. You got controls up here for turning on and off your flash light and bulb. You've got the settings menu here. You can, of course, do the number of things you can always do through Androids. You can, of course, do lots of different controls, image resolution, video quality, etc., where you can adjust it up and down, view durations, image adjustments that you can take and make basically just like you would with an expensive camera. You can make definite adjustments to it. You can, of course, change your ISO, white balance settings. One thing that is nice with the HTC phone is it has a feature where you can shoot up to 20 frames in like an action shot, and then you decide which ones you want to take and keep, and it will delete the rest of them. It also has continuous shooting, which is really fast, and so that works out really well. Let's go into camera options. You can see here you've got a few different things you can do with face detection, auto smile capture, widescreen resolution, etc. Video options, you've got different things like stabilization, record with audio, camera interface, of course, the grid, all that sort of good stuff, auto upload, etc. Down here you have the ability to change different scenes, if you will, for camera scenes, HDR, portrait, landscape. These can help adjust some of the auto settings for light and different other issues you may have in shooting environments. With this opaque circle up here, this gives you the ability to create different effects, and the effects become apparent in the lens that you can take and see, and you can choose several different ones that they have available here for you, which is pretty cool. And of course you can choose what you want to take and do. You can see here we have a zoom bar, so we can zoom in and out, and then we also have a shutter button and a button for using the video camera. The portfolio, or area that will keep track of your photos, you can find, of course, there in your bottom right hand side. Now, the colors come out really good on the HTCs, but one thing that's interesting about the HTC One line is they've jacked up the yellow, blues, and greens, and they've basically done it to make the photos pop a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with it. You can adjust it down in the settings if you want, but we have noticed that the colors come out with a lot more yellow, and if you're in a yellow environment, you tend to notice it a whole lot more. This is an example of a shot we did. It takes great photos with the S and both with the X. I mean, I think they're probably the same camera when it comes down to it in their build. But you can see here this the floor of my kitchen is much darker than this, and you can see here the contribution of the yellows and also the greens. It works very well. The colors in video and in photos look really good. Comes out really nice. There's sometimes when I'm using other smartphone cameras where I have to actually kind of enhance the lighting in post-production. So this gives you kind of that feel and balance to it. You can also see here how it performs in a video setting with taking video. And you can also see here there's a little bit more yellow than what you would see on the photo that's coming through on the video. So very interesting that one. Of course, there's different ways of adjusting this and all that good stuff. So it's not a killer in any way, shape, or form. It's a great camera that's in the S and the X. Let's go into a low light video situation. This is, of course, using the camcorder light, if you will, on the back of the thing. We got great colors, very good details in low light situation. This was a dark area. It was completely black, and the phone lights it up very well and shows it off very well. Flash-wise, in a flash environment, this is a low-level environment where this was all dark. You can see here the flash is very well lit up the environment. We've got the colors still pop. We've got very accurate shooting and detail. So, very great camera on the HTC One S. Okay, so now I'm taking a look at the HTC One X. Everything's pretty much similar, everything in its operation, how it operates, not much changes here. There evidently was some small improvements to the camera that you won't notice on the back end that was found in the 4.04 update. Once again, really great pictures that I love with the X. The pictures do seem to be better, but maybe it's because I'm seeing them through a bigger screen. It's not much, it's very slight, but you can see here once again, lots of yellows, lots of greens, but it takes great photos and it brings out the brightness very well. Let's take a look at video. Video, once again, I'm pretty sure these probably have the same internal build of camera. They both take really great video shots. You almost can't really notice the difference other than the fact that one screen is bigger than the other. Here's a low light shot. Of course, you can see here the colors pop. This is completely dark. It brought everything out and did very well in a shoot. Same thing with a low light video situation here. Performed very well at getting this stuff done. So yeah, both phones operated really, really well, and I think they're similar in comparison when it comes to the camera build. So you're probably not going to determine much between the two cameras, given as how they are that way. So overall, we've taken a look at both phones. They're both great phones. The one through AT&T at AT&T.com, you can get the HTC One X, and then also with the T-Mobile at t-mobile.com, you can get the One S. I have to tell you, I love both phones. One of the aspects of the X is the bigger screen. One of the other aspects of the S is I like the kind of steely frame, metal sort of experience. I like the thinner screen where it's easier to hold in the hand. I like the camera protection, everything else. But both are great phones. It would be really hard for me to decide which of these phones I like better because I really like a big screen. I'm kind of a guy that way. So it's up to you and what you determine you want to take and do. Be sure to check out both phones and compare them as with both AT&T and T-Mobile. Thank you guys for providing the phones for our review. And be sure to check out all the reviews we're doing on the chrisvossshow.com and our YouTube channel you'll want to take and subscribe to so you can check them out. Hope you find the phone you're looking for. Watch for our review that we're going to do where we're going to throw in an HTC One V and compare three versus against each other.